The technicalities of photography can often get daunting for budding artists like you. After watching this video, you will be able to use the various functions of your camera, phone or DSLR that determine exposure and use those tools in a creative manner for your photography. So what is exposure? Well, it is simply the amount of light that makes it to your camera's image sensor and into your image. Controlling your exposure can be a powerful tool as it allows you to increase or decrease the brightness of your image according to your creative needs. There are different settings that govern your exposure: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, which form the exposure triangle. These settings not only change your exposure but also have creative side effects, as I like to call them. Understanding what they physically do to your camera provides us with powerful tools for our photography. Firstly, aperture. This is an opening in the lens that lets light through. Think of it as the iris in your eye. Naturally, closing down the aperture lets in less light, reducing your exposure, and vice versa. The creative side effect, as I call it, of aperture is that it changes the depth of field, meaning objects away from the focus appear blurry. They call this bokeh. Think of it as the portrait mode on your phone. Secondly, the shutter speed, which is the time your camera is exposed to light. The longer it is exposed to light, the brighter the image gets. Its side effect is that it can cause moving objects to get blurry. This blur can be used in a creative manner as seen. Lastly, the ISO. This determines how sensitive your camera sensor is to light. Make it too sensitive, and while it increases exposure, it also introduces grain in your image, reducing its quality, which again can be incorporated creatively. Aperture, shutter speed, and ISO all play a balancing act in determining your exposure. Changing one setting forces you to compensate by changing the others as well if you want to maintain the same exposure. This is why you must have seen photography studios with those big bright lights. More light provides greater flexibility to the photographer in choosing creative effects for their image.